Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana, and today I'm here to bring you my third installment of the A to Z of Queer Lit. Before we get into that, if you enjoy me discussing queer books and queer stuff, I was recently invited to be on an episode of a podcast called And Nobody Dies in This One, and the episode should be up by the time you see this. So if you're able to access that, if you're interested, I will include a link down below for the episode, so you should definitely check that out. But let's get back to business, and the business is queer books. The A to Z of Queer Lit Challenge was created by George Lester. I will link his video down below, as well as the 2 installments I've done in the past. It's pretty straightforward. All you have to do is match every letter of the alphabet with one queer book, and that letter has to appear somewhere either in the author's name or in the actual title of the book. As I always say, this is not a definitive list, but it's a good way to get 26 individual recommendations for Queer Lit. So let's get into it. A is for The Avant-Gardes by Carly Usdin and Noah Hayes. This is a queer sports comic with an all-black female cast about Charlie, who transferred to an art school promising herself she would never again join a basketball team, but that was before she was being courted by the cute yet persistent captain of the Avant-Gardes. The energy of this comic is 100% Check Please meets Giant Days. B is for Blanca y Roja by Anna Marie McLemore. This is an Own Voices queer Latinx magical realism story about 2 sisters, Blanca and Roja, who are burdened by a family curse that says one of them will transform into a swan, but they don't know which of them will succumb to the curse. It is beautifully written, and one of the characters has a non-binary love interest who is written with an unprecedented amount of thoughtfulness. C is for Caroline's Heart by Austin Chant. This is Own Voices trans fantasy meets the Wild West in the story about Cecily, who's trying to perfect a resurrection spell to bring back her soulmate. But just when she's getting close, she encounters a fatally injured cowboy who requires an essential piece of the resurrection spell in order to survive. D is for The Trouble by Daria DeFore. This is an Own Voices aromantic story about Danny Kim, the frontman of a Seattle rock band who is queer and obviously aromantic. One night after a gig, he badly hits on this incredibly attractive guy who turns out to be the TA for his accounting class. E is for The Disasters by M.K. England. This is a sci-fi epic about an incredibly gifted pilot named Nax, and on his first day at the prestigious Ellis Station Academy, he gets kicked out. Now, ironically, he and the other Academy washouts are the only ones who can counter an intergalactic terrorist attack. Also, Nax is a bi-disaster if the title wasn't clear enough. F is for Fire Song by Adam Garnett Jones. This is an Own Voices queer native story about a two-spirit teenager named Shane whose plans of getting off the reservation and going to college are put on hold when his younger sister suddenly commits suicide, which has torn his family apart. And it's about Shane grieving and seeking refuge in his boyfriend David while trying to decide if and how he can move forward with his life and his plans. G is for Mean Little Deaf Queer by Terry Galloway. This is an Own Voices memoir about how Terry Galloway gradually lost her sense of hearing as a child and how she became an outspoken, self-declared child freak. After that, she turned to theater and performance to better express and understand herself. H is for Hot Dog Girl by Jennifer Dugan. This is a YA romance about Eloise, who has recently graduated and is working over the summer for a local theme park as a dancing hot dog, of course. The problem is she's trying to catch the eye of the dreamy diving pirate Nick, but why would he look her way when he already has a girlfriend who is literally the princess of the park? I haven't read this one yet, but I'm pretty sure it has a bisexual protagonist. I is for I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. This is an Own Voices queer YA story about Ben, who recently came out to their parents as non-binary only to be kicked out of their house. After being taken in by their estranged sister and transferring schools, Ben meets a charming, charismatic classmate named Nathan who's starting to make them believe again in happiness and acceptance. I did make an Own Voices review for this book in my 5 Reasons to Read video, so definitely check that out. J is for The House of Impossible Beauties by Joseph CASSARA. This is an Own Voices queer Latinx historical fiction story that spins a fictional take on the real historical figures who founded the House of Extravaganza, the first all-Latinx house in 1980s New York. At its heart, it's really about the hardships these queer and trans Latinx folks faced in order to live as themselves. This book does come with a lot of triggers, but ultimately it's full of beauty and hope. If you want to know more about it, I did make another 5 Reasons to Read video, which you can watch. K is for If It Makes You Happy by Claire Kahn. This is a newly released Own Voices YA romance about Winnie, who is getting ready to go to college, and she's spending the summer working at her granny's diner, which very well may shut down if they don't make some money fast. So Winnie has a plan to get cast in this televised cooking competition and win the grand prize, and all the while she's starting to spend her nights with this annoyingly attractive guy named Dallas. From what I know, this story has a protagonist who's in a committed queer platonic relationship, and she's discovering romantic love for the first time in her life, which sounds really great. L is for The Lost Coast by Amy Rose Capetta. This is an Own Voices YA story about a group of queer witches called the Greys who cast a spell that summons Danny halfway across the country because she has the power to bring back someone known as Imogen, the most powerful of the Greys. Before she can find Imogen, Danny finds a dead boy with a redwood branch through his heart, and she realizes that she has to figure out what's lurking in this forest or else she might die next. M is for Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. This is an Own Voices queer collection of extremely dark, spooky short stories that all revolve around supernatural phenomena that threaten women's bodies or their right to their bodies. It is a powerful and haunting collection that puts queer women at the forefront of every piece. N is for Go For It Nakamura by Sion Dae. This is a queer slice-of-life one-shot manga about resident queer disaster Nakamura, who is incredibly pressed about his attractive classmate Hirose, who he hasn't even introduced himself to yet. The question is, will he become too overwhelmed by his daydreams to make a good first impression in the first place? O is for Our Dreams at Dusk by Kamatani Yuki. This is an Own Voices queer slice-of-life manga about Tazuku, a young high school boy who is questioning his sexual orientation when his classmates find something damning on his phone, ridiculing him to the point where he considers taking his own life. But at that moment, he sees a mysterious person who leads him to a local drop-in center for queer folks facing the same issues. P is for Bloom by Savannah Ganusho and Kevin Panetta. This is a queer graphic novel about Ari, who really wants to leave behind the family bakery and go to live in the city with his bandmates and pursue music. But before he can do that, he has to find and train a replacement baker, which is how he meets Hector, who is making Ari rethink every last one of his plans. Q is for Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is a queer new adult romance about the biracial Hispanic first son of the United States, Alex Claremont Diaz, and his sworn enemy Henry, the Prince of Wales. The two of them get into a public dispute at a royal wedding that makes headlines, and in order to divert any negative press that might impact British-American relations, the two of them have to pretend to be best friends. And of course, they realize that the hate they once felt for each other may not actually be hate. R is for How to Be Remy Cameron by Julian Winters. This is an upcoming Own Voices queer YA story about Remy Cameron, who's known by everyone as the adopted, black, out and proud gay guy, but he's realizing that he doesn't really know anything else about himself. So when he's assigned an essay to describe the entirety of himself, he goes on a journey to discover who he really is beyond the labels that everyone else sees. S is for The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a queer middle grade story about Sunny St. James, who's just had a heart transplant and now she wants to start a new life plan, which includes doing some awesome new things, finding a new best friend, and kissing a boy on the lips. But after she meets her new best friend Quinn, she's wondering if she actually wants to kiss a boy in the first place. T is for Tell Me How You Really Feel by Amina May Safi. This is an Own Voices queer sapphic story about an Iranian-American teenager named Sana and her crush/sworn enemy Rachel, who is Mexican and Jewish. When they were freshmen, Sana tried sincerely asking Rachel out, but Rachel took it as the popular head cheerleader picking on the scholarship film geek and has resented Sana ever since. Now, after accidentally damaging one of Rachel's expensive school-issued cameras, Sana is cast as the lead role in Rachel's crucial final assignment as punishment. U is for How to Be a Normal Person by T.J. Klune. This is a queer romance about an extremely awkward guy named Gustavo who meets Casey, an asexual stoner hipster who works at Lottie's Lattes and who's convinced that Gustavo is like the most awesome person in existence. But for some reason, Gus believes that he's not a normal person, and I think spending time with Casey might be allowing him to see himself in a different light. V is for The Grief Keeper by Alexandra Villasante. This is a recently released Own Voices queer Latinx story about Marisol, whose family fled from El Salvador under threat of death, only to be caught as illegal immigrants in the United States. Desperate to stay in the States, Marisol agrees to become a grief keeper, which is an experimental position that would allow her to take the grief of another person into her own body to save that person's life. W is for Wandering Sun by Shimura Takako. This is a queer slice-of-life manga about two children, Nitori and Takatsuki, who are on the threshold of puberty and who both have the same secret. They are trans. It's a really tender, evocative exploration of defying boundaries and trying to explore and solidify your sense of self when you may not have the vocabulary or facility to do that. X is my one freebie spot, and I'm using it on Cantoras by Carolina de Robertes. This is an upcoming Own Voices queer Latinx historical fiction story set in 1977 Uruguay, where queerness has basically become a punishable crime by the presiding military government. Despite that, this group of 5 queer singers has come upon this isolated, unoccupied cape which they claim as their sanctuary and a place where they can be themselves. Y is for The Air You Breathe by Francis de Pontes Bibles. This is another Own Voices queer Latinx historical fiction story about these two Brazilian girls, Dores and Graça, who come from very different backgrounds but who both want to become famous chambistas. Graça has an incredible voice while Dores has a knack for composing the music, and the story is about how they push each other to achieve their dreams for better or worse. And finally, Z is for Syncopation by Anna Szabo. This is queer erotica, I believe, about Ray Van Zeller, the face of this new and upcoming rock band who goes viral after getting into a heated confrontation with one of his bandmates. And besides the PR nightmare that causes, things get worse when the band hires a talented new drummer who happens to be Ray's old high school crush. And I believe the protagonist is pansexual and aromantic. So there you have it. Those are 26 new queer recommendations. If there's a queer book that you would like to recommend for a certain letter of the alphabet, let me know what it would be in the comments. But that's everything I had for this A to Z of Queer Lit today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you on the flip side of the page.